The world's wealthiest families are moving their money in ways they haven't since 1971. And if you're not paying attention, you're about to miss the biggest economic transformation of your lifetime. Right now, at this very moment, central banks across the globe are testing digital currencies that could make your current savings accounts obsolete. Billionaires are quietly shifting trillions into hard assets, and governments are implementing policies that will fundamentally change who owns what by 2027. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is happening in boardrooms, policy meetings, and financial institutions, while most people are completely unaware. The silent reset has already begun, and the window to protect yourself is closing faster than anyone realizes. Let me tell you about Margaret, a 58-year-old schoolteacher from Ohio who discovered something terrifying in 2023. She'd been diligently saving for 30 years, building what she thought was a comfortable retirement fund of about $400,000. Then she attended a routine financial planning seminar where the advisor mentioned something that made her blood run cold. He casually explained that central bank digital currencies were being rolled out globally, and that cash as we know it might be programmable within 5 years. Margaret went home and started researching, and what she found kept her up for 3 nights straight. The wealth she'd accumulated over 3 decades could potentially be subject to expiration dates, spending restrictions, and negative interest rates, all controlled by algorithms she'd never see or understand. She realized she wasn't saving money. She was saving numbers in a system that was about to fundamentally change its rules. Margaret's story isn't unique. It's a preview of what millions will face as we approach 2027. The silent reset isn't a single event. It's a convergence of multiple massive shifts happening simultaneously across the global financial system. Central banks in over 100 countries are developing or piloting central bank digital currencies, with China's digital yuan already being used by hundreds of millions of people. The European Central Bank has committed to launching the digital euro, and the Federal Reserve has been conducting extensive research on a digital dollar. These aren't just electronic versions of current currencies. They represent a fundamental reimagining of what money actually is. Unlike the cash in your wallet, or even the digits in your bank account, CBDCs can be programmed with rules. They can expire if not spent by certain dates, encouraging constant consumption. They can be restricted from purchasing certain goods or services. They can carry negative interest rates, meaning your money literally loses value the longer you hold it. Most importantly, every single transaction can be tracked, recorded, and analyzed in real time by authorities. While central banks are building this new infrastructure, something equally significant is happening in the world of physical assets. The ultra-wealthy aren't just diversifying, they're fundamentally restructuring their portfolios in ways that suggest they know something the general public doesn't. In 2023 and 2024, billionaires purchased farmland at unprecedented rates. Bill Gates became America's largest private farmland owner. Investment funds bought entire neighborhoods of single-family homes, converting an entire generation's path to home ownership into permanent rental relationships. Gold purchases by central banks hit record levels not seen since the 1960s. And luxury assets, from fine art to rare watches to vintage cars, have seen price explosions that defy traditional market logic. This isn't random market activity. This is coordinated preparation for a monetary environment where traditional investments may not hold value the way they have for the past 50 years. The date of 2027 isn't arbitrary. It represents the convergence point of multiple critical timelines that are reshaping global finance. The International Monetary Fund's special drawing rights system is undergoing its most significant revision since its creation, with discussions about making SDRs the primary global reserve asset instead of the dollar. The Basel III banking regulations reach full implementation around this timeframe, fundamentally changing how banks must hold and value assets. Multiple major economies have set 2027 as target dates for rolling out their CBDC systems beyond pilot programs into full implementation. And perhaps most significantly, the current dollar-dominated system that's existed since 1971 when Nixon ended gold convertibility will have reached the typical lifespan of historical monetary systems, which average about 50 to 60 years before major restructuring. These aren't coincidences, they're coordinated transitions being managed at the highest levels of global finance. What makes this reset truly silent is how it's being implemented without major public announcement or democratic debate. There are no headlines screaming that your monetary system is being fundamentally altered. Instead, it's happening through technical policy changes, regulatory updates, and pilot programs that sound boring and inconsequential to the average person. The Bank for International Settlements, often called the Central Bank of Central Banks, has published extensive papers on the new monetary architecture, but these documents are written in such technical language that they might as well be invisible to the public. Meanwhile, World Economic Forum meetings discuss the Great Reset openly, but frame it in terms of sustainability and equality rather than monetary transformation, making anyone who raises concerns sound like they're opposing environmental protection rather than questioning the restructuring of wealth itself. The implications for ordinary people are staggering and multifaceted. If your wealth is primarily held in traditional savings accounts or standard investment vehicles, you're exposed to several converging risks. First, the transition to CBDCs will likely involve some form of conversion event where your current dollars become digital dollars, and the exchange rate might not be 1-to-1. Especially if there's a jubilee component that reduces debt, but also reduces savings proportionally. Second, property rights themselves are being redefined through mechanisms like perpetual rental systems, stakeholder capitalism models that diffuse ownership, and digital property rights in the metaverse that exist purely at the discretion of platform owners. Third, the tax infrastructure is being rebuilt to capture wealth transfers in real time rather than annually, meaning every transaction could carry immediate tax implications calculated and deducted automatically. The psychology of this moment is perhaps the most fascinating aspect. Most people suffer from normalcy bias, the assumption that tomorrow will basically look like today, with minor, incremental changes. This bias causes people to dismiss major systemic changes as impossible or too disruptive to actually happen. But monetary resets have happened repeatedly throughout history. Rome debased its currency into hyperinflation. Weimar Germany experienced currency collapse. The Bretton Woods system ended abruptly. The gold standard was abandoned. Each time, the people who prepared maintained their wealth, while those who trusted the system to remain stable lost everything. The difference now is that we have historical precedent showing us exactly what happens during these transitions, yet people still assume it can't happen in their lifetime, in their country, with their currency. So what does preparing for this reset actually look like? The wealthy are giving us a roadmap through their actions. They're moving significant portions of their wealth into hard assets that have intrinsic value independent of any monetary system. They're diversifying geographically, holding assets in multiple jurisdictions so that no single government policy can wipe out their wealth. They're investing in productive assets like businesses and farmland that generate real value regardless of what happens to paper currencies. They're building community networks and relationships that provide economic resilience beyond just financial holdings. And perhaps most importantly, they're educating themselves about monetary history and economic policy so they can see these changes coming and adapt quickly. The middle class faces a particular challenge because they have enough wealth to lose, but typically lack the financial education to understand what's happening. Someone with $50,000 in savings is wealthy enough that a 30 or 40% devaluation would be devastating, but they're usually not wealthy enough to have access to the financial advisors and estate planners who are helping billionaires navigate this transition. This creates a wealth trap, where the mechanisms designed to preserve wealth are only accessible to those who already have substantial wealth, accelerating the concentration of resources at the very top. Breaking out of this trap requires aggressive self-education and a willingness to make financial decisions that might seem unusual or overly cautious to friends and family who aren't aware of these larger trends. The geographical dimension of this reset is equally important. Not all countries will implement these changes at the same speed or in the same ways. Some nations will move aggressively toward full CBDC implementation with significant restrictions and controls. Others will maintain more traditional monetary systems, at least temporarily, creating arbitrage opportunities for those who understand the differences. China is leading the authoritarian approach with comprehensive digital currency controls tied to social credit systems. The European Union is taking a regulatory approach with extensive rules, but somewhat more privacy protections. The United States is moving more slowly, partly due to political resistance and constitutional concerns about financial surveillance. This creates a strategic opportunity for those who can position assets across multiple jurisdictions, but it requires understanding the different trajectories each region is taking. The role of technology in enabling this reset cannot be overstated. Blockchain technology makes programmable money possible. Artificial intelligence makes real-time transaction monitoring and analysis feasible for billions of transactions. Digital identity systems make it possible to link every financial action to a specific individual. And the Internet of Things is creating a world where even physical objects can participate in automated financial transactions without human intervention. These technologies aren't inherently good or bad, but they're creating capabilities that previous generations of financial controllers could only dream of. A central bank in 1950 couldn't possibly monitor every transaction by every citizen, so they didn't even try. Today's central banks can do exactly that, and they're building the infrastructure to make it standard operating procedure. What's particularly insidious about this transition is that it's being sold as progress, convenience, and security. Digital currencies are marketed as faster and more efficient than cash. Comprehensive financial monitoring is positioned as anti-terrorism and anti-money laundering protection. Negative interest rates are framed as necessary monetary policy to stimulate the economy. Property rental instead of ownership is presented as flexibility and freedom from maintenance responsibilities. Each individual piece sounds reasonable in isolation, but together they create a system where you own nothing, have no privacy, rent everything from someone else, and have your financial behavior shaped by algorithmic controls you can't see or contest. This is the world being built for 2027, and most people will walk into it voluntarily because each step seems like a minor convenience rather than a fundamental loss of economic freedom. The question isn't whether this reset will happen. The evidence is overwhelming that it's already in progress. The question is whether you'll be positioned to maintain your wealth through the transition, or whether you'll be among those who wake up in 2027 or 2028 wondering why their purchasing power has evaporated and their financial freedom has disappeared. The window for action is narrowing rapidly. Every month that passes sees more infrastructure put in place, more regulations implemented, more pilot programs expanded, and more wealth transferred into protected positions by those who understand what's coming. Margaret, the teacher from Ohio, started moving portions of her savings into physical assets, learning about alternative store of value options, and building skills that have economic value independent of the monetary system. She'll never be a billionaire, but she's doing what she can to ensure that 30 years of work doesn't disappear in a reset she ignored. The silent reset is happening whether we acknowledge it or not, and your financial future depends on what you do with this information right now, today, before the window closes completely.